If you're able to sketch like this, what I mean is more like a flat line here on the perspective, but if you saw something like that online and if you are wondering how to do it, basically it's a more dynamic perspective and proportions, well, in this video I'm gonna show you how to do that. It is not for directly beginners. For beginners, I suggest to first start to learn the flat line perspective, this one that I showed, or even start from side view if you are very beginner on car design sketching. But if you got bored of this and if you want to go to next level, let me show you how to do it on paper. This sketch you see here, I mean this is a side view anyway, and then I have like a very flat perspective, let's call. It's not that dynamic as, for example, this one. And what is the difference is basically the exaggeration of the perspective and a little bit of proportions, and it adds a lot of dynamism to the sketch. Here we have generally a flat line. Also on this sketch you can see a flat line, even if the angle is way more front oriented here, and here we have more side. Doesn't matter that they both are very simple to sketch. That's like the first step to learn if you are learning perspective. If you are new to car design sketching, it's better to start with the flat line and then putting the wheels to understand how to rotate the car first. But in this video I want to go to the next step, adding a little bit more dynamism to the sketch. As you see, this is not a flat line anymore. We bend the perspective, seeing the car from more dynamic angle. So if you are not able to do this yet, I wouldn't recommend you to jump into this one. My recommendation would be go to bertkaplan.com to enroll on my car design sketching course to learn the basics first, and then you can get into the next step. So let's start. What we need to do is like to this type of sketch, I start from the first putting the front wheel, or if you're sketching from the rear perspective, the rear wheel. Basically the wheel closer to our eyes. I put it not like a straight ellipse. This would be like a straight ellipse. I will put it with an angle and not that narrow, a little bit wider ellipse. So something like this. What this indicates is I have the axis of this ellipse, something like that. So it shows my perspective line. The first one is going this way, or maybe a little bit more like this actually. And the second one is, think about it like a way smaller, both narrower, and the angle is also tilted a little bit. So if this is the front one, okay, maybe rather than jumping into what I do automatically, let's do step by step. You know, on the side view, for example, if we have 1, 2, 3 wheels in between front and wheel, like if this is my rear wheel, if this is the front wheel, we have the 3 wheels in between. It's kind of the same thing, but gradually from this to this we need to go. So if this is 1, 2, I mean, this is the front, 1, 2, 3, and then the next one maybe. So as you see, you can see like how it goes gradually smaller and a more flat angle. If it was going to this direction, I would first start from a different angle because my perspective would be like this. This would be the first wheel. Let's say 1 in between, another 1 in between. And how fast you want to go to here, it also depends on how much you want to exaggerate. Like the same thing here can be like, I will draw a similar one to this one. I can also do it more slower, like 2, 3, and then the third one. As you see, this one was shorter. It ended here because it was way more aggressive change, and here I'm going a little bit more slower change. So the first recommendation would be definitely work on this, like draw different ellipses and try to imagine it's going around. For example, here 1, there's 1 in between, another 1 in between, another 1, and then that. It's a little bit off. It's okay. It's an exaggerated sketch. So that's one thing, the wheels. Like this will be the beginning of the sketch. Let's throw this away, or let's go to the back side of it. Second thing is basically the car. So if I put, for example, again 1, and the second one I do by eye. Like take a little bit of risk. I mean, you'll get used to it, but it's also flexible. You don't need to make it very hard lines. So we have flexibility. So let's say I have, for example, 5-spoke rim here, another 5-spoke rim here. Then what I start generally, if this is a front view, I start thinking about the muscle. There will be a volume of the muscle here. And if this is going like that, if I exaggerate the perspective, the second shoulder line, front shoulder or the front muscle would be like this. And I already see like it doesn't match exactly what I wanted, because I'd go with a bit more exaggerated perspective. So the second one would be probably higher, like here. So the first sketch, especially while learning, it has to be more like a practicing, more exploration. Because even if I tell you every step I do here, you will need to explore yourself. You need to try and find that what works best for you. And then I put also like a volume on the back. Let's say there's like a rear muscle or the shoulder here. And then I added, let's go with a coupe. I added the coupe roof. That might be tricky also, depends on what type. On the coupe, honestly, I think it's the easier, because even on the side we would look similar to this. If it's more like a boxy car, I think you will maybe struggle a little bit. We can also do it in another video, but I would recommend you to explore with different body types as well. So what I do it now is, already we have a very good base. Like if you look at here, we already see a nice perspective, exaggerated starting point of sketch. I had this line here, and I have the second one on the back. And as you see, they're getting closer to touch somewhere here, like a vanishing point. So I'm gonna do, when I go to back or this angle, I will try to get close to the rear one and complete my roof line. Another thing is, as you imagined this wheel kind of like getting smaller and more rotated on the back, also the roof line, this angle will not be the parallel here. It's a little bit more leaning, because if you imagine the car from front view, it would be more like going upwards, and from side view, okay, let me show it visually. Give me a second. Here, for example, we have the Cayman. This is the Cayman 987.1, by the way. I have the real one, 987.2. I actually need to make a video about my own Porsche Cayman. I'm still processing this, that I bought that car. It's just amazing. Anyway, so when I look at this car here, or let's say from the front, you see this angle of the A-pillar. It's more going upwards directly. But more I rotate, as you see this line here, because on the side view we have a bit more leaning backwards roof line here. So when I rotate more, this and this not same anymore, because on the side they are also not same. The glass, the windshield, is a little bit more leaning angle compared to the A-pillar. So also when I rotate like this, I don't draw the A-pillar here actually. I don't even see the A-pillar. So I'm drawing the windshield on the far angle, and on the closer one, I just put the A-pillar. I hope it makes sense what I just said. So here what I'm drawing is more the A-pillar, sorry, more the windshield, and here is more the A-pillar. That's why the angle is also getting a little bit more going this way. So now it's more or less getting there. We have the muscle here going down, and then the bonnet, and then going up again, so I can push it up. So after I have the basics, I can play around with the design. And here we have the front of the car, maybe something like that, the front end. So it doesn't look like a nice sketch here at the moment, but it's like a good starting point. It gives me the good understanding of the perspective. Next would be thinking about the design now. Of course, when I put the volume, it reflects also the brand identity, the design and everything. But if you want to go to now graphics, it's better to do it like after structuring the basic proportions and the perspective of the car. So now, for example, I can put one of the headlights here, maybe somehow connected here, the nose. So from this point on, it's more like having fun with the ideation, trying different ideas. But for the sketching, we already have the base. And another tip, for example, now if I want to do it from zero here, because I kind of don't like it, it's a little bit too fat looking car. I want to make it a bit more extended, maybe, or a bit more wider. Let's try it. I will do the same. First, putting the one wheel, the second wheel roughly. And what gives the sketch a nice sketchy feeling, in my opinion, is that it doesn't have to be totally 100% correct everything. Or it doesn't have to be resolved, like refined all the lines. It can be very rough. It's an ideation sketch. For example, I started now thinking about the shoulders again. Let's try to do, for example, some sort of Alfa Romeo. So I would know that this will be more or less my nose. I'm not refining, or I'm not making any line hard yet or thick. I'm just putting things to understand the proportion, because it's not like you settle everything step by step perfectly. It's more like you start from one point, you continue doing the rest of the car, and then on the way you start to seeing, like when you put another line, oh, actually this first muscle was not that good, it's better to change this and that. That's the sketching process, that's the design process. So don't feel like everything has to be correct at the beginning of the sketch. It's more like a process, and you will have time to fix it or play with it, let's say. So that's what I'm doing here now. I'm just experimenting with different lines. Like the wheel is maybe a little bit too much. And another tip, like it can be a whole different video about it, but basically you don't need to finish your sketch. Like if this is my focus point of the sketch, I can just do more lines darker and thicker here. And I don't need to focus on the side of the car on this sketch. It also adds like a nice value to the sketch, a bit more interesting, dynamic, and more artistic approach. I don't know what I'm doing exactly here. I thought this would be the air intake. And now what about here? This is a bit awkward. So maybe it continues like this. Here I added like a blade, like a splitting part of this air intake. Okay, it was kind of a mistake. And we made it another design element there. And as you see, even this side of the car is not that important compared to here. This is the focus point of my sketch. So I can even add a little bit of shading to show the direction of the surface. Maybe here this continues to become a character line. And as I mentioned, I don't even put the details to the side of the car. It's not that important on this sketch. Not every sketch has to be like perfectly refined, everything. You don't need to show everything about the car in one sketch. I mean, you cannot anyway. So try to focus on the main message on each sketch. I think this is even enough. I don't need to overdo it. Of course, I can add more details. I can even put like a rough maybe interior inside here, a little bit of steering wheel. Maybe I can think about the windshield, the A-pillar. Like even if A-pillar now is here, I know that windshield goes a bit of different angle, and I can show it by using a little bit of shading there. Here we go. As I said, it can be more detailed. It can be developed further, but as you see, this was the base. I was not happy with a couple of things, and with subtle changes this turned into that. What I did is, when I compare, first of all, the wheels are a bit more balanced in comparison. I see that I pushed this wheel a little bit outside and rotated a little bit more on this one. And also about the overall volumes, this is very thick, very big volume. Here I kept it a little bit more fit version, let's say, and it looks better on top. Of course, because of also I added some dynamics and some line weights and so on. If this is so complex for you, it looks very difficult. First of all, depends on your level. If you are very beginner to car design sketchings, as I said, I would recommend to start from side view and then like a flat line perspective, let's call it. And you can see those on my beginner's course, car design sketching course on bertkaplan.com. I focus on the perspective, proportions, line quality, line weight, and this kind of things. But if you are able to do this and struggling to come to here, and if it feels difficult, it's totally fine. Because it is difficult. It takes practice and a lot of repetition, of course. You need to try again and again and again and again. And one tip that I give on many of my videos is, like, after drawing, for example, this, you can rotate the paper. Okay, in that case, it's dirty on this side, but if I, for example, put a light, I hope it's visible on the camera, that I see the car from the other, like a mirrored version. And this can show me my mistakes, like on the perspective and so on. So my recommendation would be flip the paper, put it down, and then sketch over this. Okay, it's not visible on the camera, but when you flip the paper, you can see the car mirrored version, and you can sketch over this to try to fix it. At the end, you also need to feel the proportions and perspective of the car. It's not like only science that put 3 wheels in between, a couple of tips and done. It's not that easy. And that's why it takes practice and effort, and that's why it's a competitive field. And you shouldn't give up and just work. I hope you learned something today. Keep on sketching. It might be a bit difficult at the beginning, but that's why we need to practice. And here on this video, you can see another real-time sketching. See you there.